For years, I thought the answer to my binge eating was somewhere out there. A better plan, more willpower, the right rule to finally follow. But it wasn't any of those things. Today, I'm walking you through the 5 things that actually changed my relationship with food. The shifts that took me from feeling out of control to feeling calm and connected. None of them are quick fixes, but all of them are things you can start practicing today.
Welcome to Binge Eating Breakthrough, the podcast to help you stop feeling out of control around food and build trust with your body. If you've tried everything but still feel stuck, you're not alone. I've been there too. I'm Jane Pilger, and I'm here to help you see binge eating in a new way so you can finally break free. Each week, you'll get the tools and insights to create peace with food and your body. Your breakthrough starts now.
Hello, trusted listener. I consider you a trusted listener because I trust that you're here today because you're ready to look at your own relationship with food a little more closely, even the parts that feel messy and maybe you'd rather not look at. I trust that you're willing to hear what actually helped me. Not because it's a formula, because it might spark something for you. So the other night, I was talking with my husband, Todd, and we were talking about just how far I've come with food and how much has changed over the years. And he asked me a question. He said, "What actually changed it for you?" And I had to think about this for a while, because if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would have told you it was finding the right way of eating, or getting myself under control, or finally finding the magic formula that told me exactly what to eat and how much to match whatever I was doing for exercise. I would have pointed to something outside of me, a plan, a formula, somebody else who could just tell me what to do. But when I really think about what changed my relationship with food, none of it was a strategy. It was 5 shifts, 5 things I had to learn, mostly the hard way, that had almost nothing to do with food itself. So a few of these things are going to sound familiar if you know my book, The Binge Eating Breakthrough, and the 4 pillars that I wrote about there. Now, I've talked a little bit about this over the last couple of episodes. So if you have listened to those episodes or you've read the book, you know that I have 4 pillars that I talk about to create peace with food. And those pillars are clarity, connection, compassion, and confidence. And today is not a repeat of that framework. The book is the map. It's the structured version I built after the fact, once I had lived enough of this journey to see the shape of it and put it in an order that made sense on paper. But today's different. Today is, it's unpolished, and it's these 5 things. When I look back, these 5 things really changed my relationship with food. And I'm going to give you specific examples for each one. And there are 2 of them that never made it into the book's pillars at all: curiosity and courage. So I want to walk you through all 5 of these things in the order that they actually happened for me. And some of them are going to sound really simple, but they weren't simple to live. But if I can name them and just describe them to you, you might start to notice which one of these you are in right now. So 5 things that changed my relationship with food. If you have been following me for any length of time, you will not be surprised at all that number 1 is awareness. The first thing that had to happen for me to change my relationship with food was awareness. And for so long, I didn't have any awareness. So I can remember this pattern. Gosh, I was probably in my 30s, maybe even in my 20s. I was working in commercial real estate, and I would go to these luncheons on a monthly basis. There are the kind of luncheon where they have the big round tables where the dessert is already sitting there at the top of your place setting before you've even received your lunch. And I would sit down and I would see that dessert and I would tell myself, I am not going to eat it. And then I would watch what everybody else at the table did. And let's say the woman next to me had a bite of her dessert. Then I would reason, it's okay for me to have a few bites too. Now, I rarely, maybe once or twice, but rarely ate the whole thing in front of people. Of course, I did not want anybody to see that. I was just sure everybody was watching me and what I was eating because I was doing that to everybody else at my table. Then I would leave the luncheon and I would decide that I had already blown it because I ate 2 or 3 or 4 bites of this dessert that I said I was going to have 0 of. And I would head straight to a convenience store to buy some candy. But that store was never the end of the journey. It was the first stop. From there, I would drive to a bakery. And then somewhere after that too, maybe the grocery store, maybe another convenience store. And I would buy just enough at each place that no single cashier would ever know just how much food I was actually buying. A little there, a little here, stop after stop. I would go until I had put together and eaten more food than I would ever let any single person see me buy on one trip. And then, of course, I had to throw away all of the wrappers and all of the evidence at another gas station before I made it home so that my husband would not see everything that I had eaten while I was driving around. And this would be hours. But here's what I know now. I had almost no awareness of that pattern while it was happening. And I don't just mean the eating itself. I mean the whole chain of stops that took place. I wasn't standing at that table as I left that luncheon thinking, I'm about to start a chain of events. I wasn't even aware, driving from the convenience store to the bakery, that I was making a decision at all. It felt like one continuous pull, not a series of choices that I was making one at a time. And it's only looking back now that I can see each stop had its own little sentence attached to it, its own bit of permission that I gave myself to keep going to the next place. In the moment, it never felt like a string of decisions. It felt like one big binge that was simply happening to me. It just took over. And now I understand it was a chain of smaller decisions, each one making the next one a little bit easier to justify. And then I would come to on the other side of it, sitting in my car surrounded by wrappers, wondering what just happened and how I had ended up there. And at the time, I didn't have a name for this. I couldn't have told you it was a pattern, let alone what was underneath it. It just felt like something that happened to me over and over without my permission. And this is what I think of as clarity. But back then, it wasn't clarity yet. It was just the flicker of noticing. Awareness was the first thing that had to change. You cannot change something you can't see. So for me, it started small, noticing the moment that I started watching other people's plates instead of my own. Noticing the story I told myself the second I decided I had already blown it. The exact sentence in my head that gave me permission to keep going. I wasn't even trying to stop anything yet. I was just trying to see it, to understand what was happening in my mind, in my body, in those moments when it felt like I was just on autopilot. So this is different than fixing it, but it has to come first. Awareness always comes first. So that is the number one thing that changed my relationship with food. Awareness. Number 2, connection. So there's this piece that I want to focus on today that is the tool that I use the most, almost every single day. And I want to talk through this in detail because it is simple, but it's powerful. So for most of my life, I had no idea what hunger actually felt like in my body, or even what fullness felt like. I either ate on a schedule, I ate because it was noon, because everyone else at the table was eating, or because this is whatever plan I was on told me this is how much to eat. My body had signals, but I had spent so many years ignoring them and I literally stopped listening to them. I didn't even know that they were still there. So a tool that is so powerful and so simple that very much is helpful with the idea of connecting is something called the 3 powerful questions. And I've shared it on the podcast before, but it's been a while since I've shared it. So here's the 3 powerful questions. What do I notice? What do I need? And what's next? And I know that this can sound almost too simple to matter, especially the first time that you hear them. But your brain will go to work to answer whatever question you ask it. And most of us have simply not asked our bodies these questions before. We're used to telling our bodies what to do, not asking them what they need. So what do I notice starts with a scan. You can scan, quick body scan. You can scan from head to toe. You can start at your toes, go up to your head. No judgment attached to what you find. You might find some tension behind the eyes. You might find a tight jaw. You might find a flutter in your stomach that could be hunger. It could be nerves. What do I need is the next question. And the honest answer, especially at first, is often nothing. You might not even get a response when you first start asking this question because your body isn't used to being asked and it doesn't yet trust that you'll actually listen to the answer. This is normal. Keep asking anyway. And the third question, what's next? It's where you respond in some small way to what you noticed and what you identified that you need. I use these 3 powerful questions constantly with myself and inside Cultivate. We open many of our Cultivate group calls with the 3 powerful questions. And I have the group answer what's next for 2 different windows. What's next for this hour that we're together? And what's next after the call ends? So you can imagine, you picture it. I do this for my life too. So on Tuesday, I eat lunch right after our Cultivate calls. And more often than not, while I'm in these calls, I picture myself eating lunch and how I want to feel in the minutes after lunch, before I've even taken a single bite. And the visualization might sound small, but the brain doesn't know the difference between imagining something and living it. So picturing myself eating in a way that feels nurturing actually helps me get there. But connection is not only internal. That's what we're talking about here with the 3 powerful questions. But I don't want to skip over the fact that connection with other people is really important as well. And for so long, I kept all of my food stuff hidden because it felt like the only way to manage it, the only way to control what other people knew or what they thought. So I did not talk about it. Not with friends, not with Todd, not with anyone. Everything I was doing stayed in the car, in the pantry, in the trash can at the convenience store on the way home. These moments I made sure that nobody else ever saw. And learning to actually talk to Todd about the struggle itself and the things that I had been keeping secret for years was its own kind of connection. And it actually turned out to be one of the biggest parts of this whole shift. I used to think I had to build connection with myself first, quietly on my own. Then maybe eventually I could let someone else in once I'd already figured it all out. But what actually happened was closer to the opposite. Connecting with him helped me connect with myself. Telling him what was actually going on, the real version instead of the version I was trying to control. Having him still be there afterwards did something that trying to do this on my own never could. He was able to meet me with a kindness and a compassion that I never was able to do on my own. And once I was able to feel it, to experience for myself, then I was able to start giving it to myself. I don't know that that ever would have been possible without being on the receiving end of some compassion and connection and curiosity. And none of this connection happened instantly. It took months of checking in, noticing what was happening without rushing to fix it or override it or make it go away. And it took just as long or longer to let another person in on what was actually happening for me. And slowly, I started to trust it was safe to slow down long enough to notice in the first place, both on my own and with someone else in the room. And that's what connection actually is. It's the same questions asked again and again to yourself and out loud to someone else until both believe you're actually listening. So 1, awareness. 2, connection. 3, compassion. The third thing was compassion. And this was the hardest one for me by far. So I used to sit in my car after a binge saying things to myself I would never say to a friend. And what actually helped me stop doing that is a tool. So it's a tool more than a story. So I'm going to give it to you. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you have heard me ask this question. It is the single question. How does this make sense? This is not an excuse. It is a true, an honest inquiry of yourself. And when I finally started asking, how does this make sense instead of what is wrong with me, I found real answers. I was exhausted. I'd learned this exact pattern of coping decades earlier and never unlearned it. I'd watched other women do some version of the same thing at those luncheons for years, made it easy to file the whole pattern under normal instead of ever questioning it. Now, I didn't watch them drive around and eat afterwards, but I watched them question the dessert. Do I eat the dessert? Do I not eat the dessert? All of the questions and the drama and the tension that went to those desserts. So it helped me see, oh, this isn't a character flaw. This is a strategy. Maybe it made sense once, even if it wasn't serving me anymore. I also started to be able to make sense of the times I was eating so little, where all the rules and the rigidity would lead me to the binging later on. I could make sense of that. I could see it. Now, here's another question that you can bring in for the compassion piece. What would I say to a friend or to a young person if they were sitting exactly where I am right now? Now, I've never once in all of these years when I have asked this question of myself, come up with an answer that sounded anything like the way that I used to talk to myself. So compassion is not something that you have to manufacture. It's a question you can ask yourself to bring in kindness. It's bringing in kindness towards yourself. Compassion is what actually makes the understanding possible in the first place. Because when you're at war with yourself after every binge or every unwanted eating experience, there is no room left to actually look at what happened. You're too busy defending yourself or attacking yourself to get curious about anything. Compassion is what clears enough space for the next thing to happen. So we have awareness, connection, and compassion. Now, the fourth is curiosity. Now, it's closely tied to compassion, but it is not the same thing. So compassion is how I started treating myself, with kindness. That's where you can bring in, what would I say to a friend? What would I say to a young person? Bring in that kindness. Once I stopped judging myself so harshly, then I could bring in curiosity to see what was actually going on. I could get curious about the pattern itself. What was I really hungry for in that moment? What was happening right before I felt the pull to binge, to go to the pantry, to get in the car, to drive to the store? What was the food actually doing for me that I couldn't get anywhere else? So you can see even how this brings in awareness too. Because if I'm stuck in shame, if I'm stuck in judgment, I can't even become aware. It's only through compassion, through curiosity, that awareness continues to expand even more. So I remember when I asked myself, like, what was really going on? And really through curiosity. I had just finished a stressful call. It was the kind that used to send me straight to the pantry without a second thought. And instead, I paused. I asked what I was actually looking for. The answer that came back wasn't food. It was relief. It was the feeling of being done, of not having to hold it all together. And once I could see that clearly, I had a choice. Because I wasn't only choosing between eating and not eating anymore. I was choosing how I wanted to get relief. Up until that point, it had always been, do I eat? Do I not eat? So focused on the food. So I started treating my own patterns like something worth investigating instead of something to be ashamed of. And that shift changed how I moved through a hard day. So instead of white knuckling my way past an urge saying, don't eat, don't eat, don't eat, I would get curious about it. What is this? What's going on? What is it trying to tell me? Now, curiosity doesn't require that you have the answer right away. It just requires you to stay in the question instead of running away from it. And it's harder than it sounds, but it's really useful and helpful. All right, so we have 4 things so far. We have awareness, we have connection, we have compassion, we have curiosity. Number 5 is courage. So courage showed up in a few different ways for me. The first way was the courage to seek support in the first place. Because I remember feeling like asking for help meant that I couldn't do it on my own. I had already failed. I should have been able to figure this out on my own if I just had enough discipline, if I just read the right book, if I just were able to do this. I should be able to do it on my own. I'm smart. Why can't I figure this out? And it took real courage to admit that I was struggling, to tell someone other than myself and let them help me instead of trying to do it all on my own. And the second form of courage was the courage to keep going when things weren't moving fast enough for me. There were stretches, sometimes long ones, where it felt like nothing was changing at all. And I had to find the resilience to stay with the process anyway, instead of deciding it wasn't working and walking away. That kind of courage doesn't get talked about much because it's quiet. Nobody sees it, but it is literally showing up, willing to try again, willing to bring in more awareness, more compassion, more curiosity. Try something different. And that is the third form of courage, the courage to try something different and to believe that something other than the pattern that I already knew was actually possible for me. So that might sound kind of like the smallest of the 3, but it wasn't. It is one thing to know intellectually that change is possible, but it's another thing entirely to sit at that luncheon table with that dessert already in front of you and do something different than you've always done trusting that the outcome might actually be different this time. Courage doesn't always look big. Sometimes it looks like sending one email to ask for help. Sometimes it looks like trying to pause before eating with no guarantee that it will work. But every one of those small moments of courage is what let the other 4 things actually take root, because none of them do anything if you never act on them. So much of what we talked about last week. So here's some practical shifts you can apply for yourself. Notice one moment of automatic eating this week, a place where you just kind of eat on autopilot. We're not even trying to change it yet. Awareness has to come first. You can't skip straight to fixing what you haven't actually seen. So see what you can notice in your eating this week. Number 2, try the 3 powerful questions before your next meal. What do I notice? What do I need? What's next? You don't even need a clear answer to any of them. Just practice asking. Number 3, the next time you're hard on yourself after eating, try asking, how does this make sense? Instead of, what's wrong with me? That one shift is where compassion starts to take root. Number 4, get curious about one urge, one craving, one desire to eat this week instead of trying to fight it. Ask, what might it actually be after? You don't even need the full answer. Just ask the question. Number 5, notice where you have been avoiding asking for help. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's a call. Maybe it's admitting out loud to someone that you are struggling. Naming it is often the most courageous part of the whole thing, and it's where you can start to get the support that you need. So I invite you to pick one of these 5 words and let it be your focus for this week. Not all 5. That's not how change works. Awareness, connection, compassion, curiosity, or courage. And see what you notice when you give it your full attention. So actually, as I am recording this episode, this afternoon, before I recorded this episode, I went to a lunch meeting for an organization that I founded almost 20 years ago. And I've been going to these meetings over the past 20 years, and I have lost count of how many of them I have left and gone straight into a binge. There were these lemon cookies out at the end of the meeting today, and the old version of me would have said, oh, I'll take one home for Todd. Then I would have eaten it alone in the car as I was driving to the next place to get more food. And I would be making sure that nobody could see me eating. But today, I grabbed one of those cookies and I ate it walking out the door in front of everyone without a second thought about who saw me. And I was tasting and enjoying that cookie, the lemon, the texture, all of it. And then I went home. There was no pull to eat more, no urge to restrict, no desire to go stop 5 other places. But here's what I did notice. I was tired. And the old version of me, the really old version of me wouldn't even notice that I was tired. An older version of me would have pushed through it or used food for a quick hit of energy or a reason to avoid going back to the rest of my day. But what I did today, I noticed I was tired and I laid down for a 10-minute nap and I woke up refreshed, ready to record this podcast episode. Such a different experience than what I have experienced in the past. And it felt easy, but that kind of ease didn't show up overnight. Now, none of these 5 things happened in a straight line. It's not like I went from awareness straight into connection into the next one. No, that's not how it works. But the 5 components are awareness, connection, compassion, curiosity, and courage. And some weeks, as you are on this journey, you will be standing more in one than another. It's how this works. So if you are finding that you can't quite get past awareness on your own, you're struggling maybe with connection, with the compassion piece, or even the awareness, like, I don't even know what my patterns are. Maybe I need some courage. Maybe I need some ideas. I encourage you to schedule a breakthrough call. It's a safe, compassionate space to talk through what's going on without judgment, with someone who has been where you are. We'll look at what you can't see on your own and figure out what your next step is. So you can find out more at janepilger.com/breakthrough, or I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes for you. So next week, we're going to explore a question that came up in a recent Cultivate call. And it's a powerful question. Who are you practicing becoming? I can't wait to share this with you next week. But for now, see which of these 5 things, which one do you want to focus on this week? Awareness, connection, compassion, curiosity, and courage. These 5 things together can truly transform your relationship with food. All right, that's what I have for you today. I'll see you next week.
If you've been trying to stop binge eating and nothing has worked, there's a reason. I created the Binge Breakthrough mini-series to help you finally understand what's driving your binge eating beneath the surface so that you can actually start to change it. Each video is short and they're designed to give you the clarity and direction you've been missing so you can stop feeling stuck and start finding your way out. Start watching now at janepilger.com/mini. That's janepilger.com/mini. MINI.